Behind the Shades.
What are some of the steps that maybe you are taking to further assist victims of human trafficking in general?
So I'm trying to get a public speaking career really launched. It's hard to get my face and name out there at first, but I have done several different events now. One earlier this year, I was invited to come speak at a church in Arizona, and my husband and I drove down there for this speaking engagement. It was wonderful. And every single time I walk out on stage, I have to listen to see if there's a little voice. If there's a little voice, that's the whisper of God, I think. And that little voice this last time told me, "You're not alone today." And I knew what it meant without having to go into details and say, "What do you mean?" I knew exactly what it meant. And when I walked up there, I told people, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I've survived. And somebody out here has been through it too. And they don't realize that it's called human trafficking because they don't see it the way that it's being portrayed with the media. By the time I was done, somebody walked up to me and said, "I didn't know that what my parents did to me when I was a little girl was called human trafficking." She was the piano player for the church. I never would have known. I can talk all day long on a stage. I can talk on a dozen podcasts, but having a one-on-one interaction with somebody who needs it most is probably the most powerful thing anybody can ever do. On my darkest day, when I was ready to commit suicide at the train, I prayed all day long, "Please, God, just send somebody to see me. Just want somebody to see me and ask me if I'm okay." Because if they ask me, I'll tell them. And nobody would look at me. People had this sense of, "Not my circus, not my monkeys. It's not my problem. Oh, she's having a bad day. I don't want to interact with her." When we do that to our fellow man, we are not doing what we are called to do as human beings. We are social creatures by nature. We need to learn to put the phones down, put our heads up, and look around us, pay attention, and start to seek out those opportunities to help. This is what my life is all about now. I want to help. I have this trauma recovery mentorship. I do public speaking when I can. I talk on podcasts with wonderful hosts when I can. Uh, but it's always the one-on-one that I reach the people the most.
You're coming face to face with people, and like the piano player, the pianist, you're bringing this out to them and you're saying that, yeah, this is that. Imagine, at least for me, hearing that story, you have someone that didn't know what they went through was actually what they went through. They maybe thought it was something else, or worse yet, some people could think that it's normal. Hey, everyone maybe goes through something like this. So when you're having that experience with this person, how did it feel to see them come into realization, hey, I went through this, I survived it. Thank you for bringing this to my attention and bringing it out of me.
There's so many mixed emotions. I feel sad for them to know that they had to go through it. But at the same time, I am absolutely overjoyed that now that they've pinpointed it, they know how to get the help they need specifically to be able to move beyond it. Because it is so hard to overcome trauma if what you've been through doesn't have a name. You think this is just some blanket abuse. This is not just abuse. This is prolonged torture. This is terrible stuff. Yeah. And if you tell people, "I grew up in an abusive household," you're going to have a lot of people who say, "Oh, I totally get it. I understand." And they don't. They don't. They don't get it. They have no idea. But when you say, "I'm a survivor of human trafficking," people stop. They take a step back and they realize, maybe I should approach my conversations with you a little bit more delicately. And it's great being able to put a name to it, being able to find the resources to move beyond it. knowing that there's now resources available to you, because there are resources available to adults who have survived human trafficking. There are organizations geared specifically for that. There's different organizations and resources and communities of other survivors, and you can come together and just be together and have this amazing experience with just your own community.
Yeah, if I were to rely on what I see, human trafficking would be painted a different way. Like you mentioned, you would think that it's everyone under the age of 18, right? And that's from the stories to the movies to the shows and everything. But you raised a good point where you said that the majority of them are actually those who are adults. And one thing I want to touch on when you said it is that, at least here in Canada, when I was studying like law and things of that nature, you're very correct to saying that the majority of the crimes committed against someone is from someone that they know. It's not what you see on TV where it's someone leaping out of the bushes and snatching you and they're running off. Does that happen? Yes. Is it the norm? Absolutely not. Right? So you should be cautious of those you don't know, of course. Like you want to be aware of your surroundings and things of that nature. But if you're thinking the kidnappings, the murders, the assaults, whether they're physical, sexual in nature, if you're thinking that is coming from someone who's lurking in the bushes, you have another thing coming. It's usually someone, as you mentioned, that's in an authority over you or someone that's close to you. And the reason why that is a level of you being comfortable and you're disarmed, right? They
Yep.
can come up to you and say, hey, why don't you come over to my home? And because you know the person, you may not think twice. And that's how they get you into it. Is that maybe something that you're cautious about when you're speaking to people, that maybe they may fall into a similar situation because they're expecting it to come from one area, but most of the time it comes from another?
Yes, absolutely. This is a big problem. The more we tell people that the issue is stranger danger, and the more we see on social media where people say, oh, I was followed in a grocery store and then followed out to my car, this has got to be human trafficking. The more we are perpetuating the stereotypes of what is not human trafficking. That guy might be a trafficker, but the chances are incredibly slim. More than likely, he thought you were pretty and he's trying to get your phone number, or he might be something far more sinister. He might be a serial rapist. Who knows? You don't want to stick around to find out. I get that. That's totally makes sense. But stop saying that it's human trafficking. Because unless you talk to that guy and you have a candid conversation with him and he tells you what his intentions are, you have no idea. We have to stop with the stereotypes. And another big confusion that a lot of people have is they confuse traffic with trafficking. You know, when we look at the definition of human trafficking, I tell people all the time, don't Google it, don't look it up on Wikipedia. These are fallible resources. These are run by humans who can have an input. You want to look somewhere like the Department of Homeland Security. This is something that is a legal document, a legal website. They're not going to be screwing up this definition. And their definition is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain commercial sex acts or labor from another person. There's no mention of transportation. So this huge myth of human trafficking and human smuggling being the same thing are completely off. There's a huge overlap in the two, but one does not equal the other. Human trafficking does not mean you are moving a person from one place to another. So you can absolutely be trafficked and have no idea about it because you might be drugged. You might be dealing with a family member who's saying, oh, just do this for me. You might be dealing with an abusive relationship. And you have no idea that what you're going through is actually trafficking at all.
So it could be, just so I clearly understand, and for those who are watching, listening, you can you can experience it within your own home. You don't actually have to leave the city or even leave where your primary address is. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You can be trafficked out of your own bedroom at home. This is probably the top way that young girls are being trafficked is from their own home.